Good afternoon. My name is Michael Butler. I am in the MAT Elementary Education Program. I have been working in education for the past 3 years, working with upper elementary students in 4th and 5th grade. I've worked primarily with students with IEP needs and any sort of special education or support services throughout the school, including students with behavior support or students with severe learning disabilities or intellectual disabilities. I've worked alongside them with some great teachers and great administrators. During those 3 years, I took the time to attend quite a few professional development opportunities and also reach out to the administrators and have conversations with them about suggested reading that would help me as an aspiring teacher get a better understanding of what it would be like to be working in a school district with different people of different backgrounds. Most of our professional development revolved around the idea of equity, and that was a recurring theme in most professional developments that I took part in. One of the books that an administrator recommended to me was Whistling Vivaldi by Claude M. Steele, which is the book I opted to use for this assignment. She picks this book to read alongside her new teachers for the building, or her non-tenured teachers. It was a school out of state, and the non-tenured teachers take part in a book club where they go through this book together, really digest and talk about each chapter of the book as they go through. So I took the opportunity to read this book for this assignment, since I was not a teacher at that time and did not get to take part in that programming. So I opted to try the book and read through it. And having read it, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought Claude M. Steele did a phenomenal job at sort of redefining my understanding of stereotypes, how they affect us and why they affect us. And I thought it was a great book that most people should read, and I totally understand why the principal suggested new teachers read that. I thought it was a very well done narrative. So why I selected this book? Like I said before, it was recommended for new teachers by my previous administrator. It's laid out in such a way where we hear a narrative of the author alongside stories that he shares about people that he's interacted with, about motivations and influences to stereotyping, identity, and just the social influence of the two. This book stood out to me as I was trying to find a professional development book. This stood out to me because of the climate that we're in, especially the political climate. I think that it is no surprise that most of the professional development that I attended revolved around the ideas of equity, race, and cultural awareness. And I think it's a really important topic during this time, where everyone seems to be able to engage in conversations that often get very heated or contentious. And I think the more people that take the time to read stories like Whistling Vivaldi have the opportunity to see multiple perspectives and have a more intellectual, calm conversation about how to make progress happen. And I felt that a topic like that was most relevant for both students and adults. So two big ideas that umbrellaed smaller ideas for me. The first was identity contingencies. So underneath that umbrella, there were two things that really stood out to me. And it was learning the language of this book that I thought someone needs to know before reading. And the language of the book really revolves around this definition of identity contingencies. And the way that the author describes it is things that you deal with because of your social identity. I thought that was a very good definition and understanding, and a really great baseline for recognizing what the entirety of the book looks like, and a great blueprint for that. It's more than just accepting a person for who they are, for their differences. It's about recognizing the influences that are behind how they're able to perform underneath those circumstances. The second component of that umbrella is recognizing the influences and how to change them and why they exist. The social identity affects classroom performance, and I'm going to get more into that after. But those two components underneath the identity contingencies really influence how people perceive themselves, perceive the world around them. And I mean, I can go on and on about this book, but only have a short amount of time, but identity contingencies is one of the large concept, and underneath that umbrella, it's about learning the language of the book and additionally recognizing the influences that these social constructs have on people. The second idea from the book that again umbrellas out is the analysis of society. Identity is often constructed by forces outside of our control. One of the areas that the book touched on was social identity affects students in the classroom. And again, I will get into it a little bit more in a bit, but it lists multiple things that affect students that are outside their control. And it talks about how it can affect their memory, their testing, their ability to perform athletically, the pressures and comfort levels of everything as it pertains to test taking along those ideas. And our influence is a tool for change. I really thought that balancing perspectives was a huge part of this analysis of society umbrella of an idea. That was the first idea, is balancing perspectives, being able to recognize why we see the way that we see and putting ourselves in someone else's shoes and being able to see how they see it too. This book is filled with examples, and I really appreciated how the author broke out into stories that they went through and people that they know went through and really carried the book through that. And it really made it an enjoyable read. The breakdown of stories really builds organically and allows you to really understand people's perspectives. It talked about a university student being a minority in a college class, and really the influence that had on them and how they were perceived things and how they were willing to share things or weren't willing to share things, and how those sort of balance our ability to swallow some of the material. So I found that really interesting. There is one story in the beginning of the book, very early on in the book, that really stood out to me when I first read it, because I had somewhat limited expectations when I was going into the book. I thought it was just another book about equity. And though that remained true in some regard, that is way too basic and rudimentary of an idea to really fill with what this book had to deal with. And early on in the book, the author shares about walking down a street, and his physical appearance of being an African-American male gives off a perception of violence, and that these couples, white couples, would go on the other side of the street. And though this wasn't a new story to hear, but the reaction and the recognition of Claude M. Steele's experience in that was put together in this one phrase that really stuck out to me. I did violence to them by just being. And I think there's a lot in that quote. There's a lot about how we perceive ourselves and how much we worried about other people based on the social construct. So he knew that he wasn't violent, but he knew that there was this thing out there that society had constructed, whether it's a stereotype or misconception that existed out there, and he was worried about something that he wasn't even a part of, and changed his behavior so that he could help ease the minds of this couple that may have shared those fears. It's a really deep and dense topic to wrestle with, but I really think that Steele's approach to it through the book is very well done. Again, there's a lot in this book. There's a lot to digest, and to break it down into 4 points is very challenging, but the two subcategories of the identity contingencies and then the second subcategory of the analysis of society, I think are the two ways to umbrella out the four big ideas. And again, the analysis of society really is about balancing perspectives and how we react to other people's perspectives. And then lastly, I just wanted to say that utilizing this in the classroom, or utilizing what I learned from this in the classroom, had a lot to do with the culture shift, a culture shift of in the classroom and in your grade. You have the unique opportunity as an educator to design a truly unique and supportive environment and celebrate the differences in that classroom, what each student brings to the classroom, and how you can cultivate something unique, fresh, and truly supportive for the students is of the utmost importance. And I think it is your role as the educator to help reshape the children's perspectives of these contingencies, of these misconceptions, of these stereotypes, so that they can help cultivate a better world where it's more inclusive. And it's not to say that that isn't happening now, but it is to say that there is progress to be made. And in order to make that progress, you need to be well informed. You need to be well educated on it. And that's something that Steele really expresses in this book. I strongly recommend reading this if you enjoy topics of equity, cultural awareness, and just at the very core of it is like redefining stereotyping and learning about its effects. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great semester.